All right, everyone, buckle up because today we're diving into something pretty powerful. Hypnotherapy and what it can do for depression. And, right off the bat, got to emphasize this deep dive. It's for you to learn something new, not a replacement for talking to a professional if you're struggling, okay? So we're digging into this ebook by a hypnotherapist, seeing literally thousands of clients. And let me tell you, this ain't your grandma's self-help book. This author, they're coming at it from a whole new angle.
Oh, really? How so?
Well, they're basically saying, hold up a sec, let's ditch the labels and those Band-Aid solutions for depression. To really get somewhere, we got to shift our whole perspective.
Interesting.
Yeah, like instead of getting caught up in whether it's major depression or whatever, they want you to look at the bigger picture. How's your past, your present, even your future playing into this whole thing?
Makes sense because those labels, while helpful for diagnosis and all, they can sometimes feel limiting.
Exactly, like
Yeah.
you're putting yourself in a box, which doesn't help anyone.
Not at all. It's more about understanding the root of the problem, right? Not just slapping a label on it.
And speaking of roots, the author uses this really cool analogy to explain how to build a good foundation for mental well-being.
Okay. I'm intrigued. What is it?
A three-legged stool.
A stool.
Yeah, hear me out. Each leg represents a key area of life: money, health, relationships. Their point is, if one leg's weak, the whole stool, meaning your life, gets shaky, unstable.
Wow, that's actually a really powerful visual.
Right, super simple, but it makes you think, how balanced is my stool right now?
It's so true. That balance is key. And this idea of balance, it's not just about those external factors, is it? It's about our mental energy too, right?
Yeah.
Especially when it comes to how we deal with the past and the future.
You hit the nail on the head. And that's where the author's approach gets really interesting, how we can shift our energy to create that balance. So ready to go a little deeper into this whole energy shift thing?
Absolutely. I'm all ears.
All right, well, the author brings up these two big ideas: internal representations and initial sensitizing events,
Hmm.
or IS for short. Sounds kind of jargony, I know, but bear with me. They're actually pretty easy to grasp.
Okay, I'm listening.
So imagine internal representations like those mental snapshots, or even little movies that play in your head, often from your past.
Got it. Like, could be images, sounds, feelings, all that jazz.
Exactly. And usually, they're not the happy memories either, right? More like stuff that keeps coming back to bite ya.
Yeah, those pesky memories.
For example, picture this. There's this mental image of you totally bombing a presentation at work, and it just keeps replaying in your mind over and over.
Oof. Yeah, I can see that.
That's an internal representation. And these things, they often connect back to what the author calls initial sensitizing events, those ITs we mentioned.
So those IZs, they're like the original source of those mental movies.
Bingo. They're those big moments, usually negative or like straight up traumatic, that kind of burn those vivid memories into your mind.
Right, makes sense.
So to stick with our example, the ISE could be the actual event of that presentation going south. Maybe the tech failed, or your boss just writ you a new one afterward.
Ouch, yeah, that'd do it. But we're not stuck with these internal representations forever, right? There's got to be a way to, like, rewire things.
That's the thing. The author is convinced we can change how these past experiences affect us.
So it's not about erasing the past, but more about changing how it makes us feel in the present.
Exactly. And they talk about using your current strength to heal those past weaknesses, which I thought was a cool way to put it.
Yeah, I like that. It's empowering.
Totally. And get this, a big part of that process is understanding what the author calls resensitizing events, or RSEs.
RSCs, okay, this is new.
So RSEs, they're those everyday things, seemingly small, that can trigger those old, crappy thought patterns and emotions. Like, they can sneak up on you.
I think I get it. It's like you might not even realize that a certain smell or sound is sending you back to that bad memory.
You got it. It's like your subconscious is making the link to the original trauma, even if you're consciously like, why am I freaking out about a paper jam right now?
Wow, that's wild when you think about it.
Right. When I read about these RSEs, it was a total aha moment for me. Started thinking back on my own life, and I was like, man, I've been totally oblivious to these little triggers.
It's true, they can be so subtle, those triggers.
Exactly. Like, say you had this super critical teacher growing up who always put you down. Years later, an RSE could be something as simple as someone giving you constructive criticism, and you just completely overreact.
Makes sense, though, if your subconscious is connecting it back to that earlier trauma.
That's the thing. So being aware of your own personal triggers, that's a huge part of this whole approach. You got to recognize those RSEs and like figure out how to deal with them without spiraling back into those old messed up patterns.
Okay, so we've talked about reframing the past, right? And we've touched on those sneaky triggers, those RSCs. But what about finding some relief, like right here, right now?
Right, exactly. How do we actually start feeling better in the present moment?
Well, this is where things get really interesting with this author. They dive into how depression shows up in our senses, like not just in our heads, but in how we see, hear, feel things, the whole 9 yards.
Really? I've never thought about it that way.
Yeah, it's wild, right? We usually think of depression as this mental thing, but they're saying it affects our whole being, even on a physical sensory level.
Huh. That's fascinating. And one of the simplest but most powerful things they say, and this just blew my mind, is that simply closing your eyes can actually help with those visual symptoms of depression.
Wait, seriously? Just closing your eyes?
I know, it sounds too easy, right? But think about it. When you close your eyes, you're giving your brain a break from all that visual input, which can be super overwhelming, especially when you're feeling down.
That's true. Our brains are constantly processing so much visual information.
Exactly. And it's nonstop, right? So closing your eyes, even just for a few seconds, it's like a mini vacation for your mind.
I can see that, like hitting the reset button.
Exactly. And beyond just closing your eyes, they have all these other techniques for shifting those internal representations we talked about.
Oh, right, those mental movies that get stuck on repeat.
Yes. The author suggests that you can actually change how you experience those memories.
Change them. How do you do that?
Well, for example, say you're haunted by this image that really freaks you out. They might have you play around with its size or how far away it feels in your mind's eye.
Huh. Interesting. So, like, if you make it smaller or further away, it's less intense, less in your face.
Exactly. And they got tons of other techniques too. But the one that really hit home for me, especially with depression, was all the stuff on that negative self-talk. You know how it is? It's like a broken record in your head.
Oh, tell me about it. That inner critic can be brutal.
Right. And the author makes this great point that the negative self-talk, it's not just a symptom of depression, it's also feeding the beast, you know?
Totally. It's like this vicious cycle. You feel down, so you think negative thoughts, which makes you feel even worse, and on it goes.
It's exhausting.
Mm.
But here's where it gets really interesting. The author has this really clever acronym, EGO, to help break down all the stuff that's going on beneath the surface, like the instincts and needs that play into depression.
EGO. Okay, now I'm really curious.
Right, so EGO stands for Essentials, Gates, and Orientation. Think of essentials as those basic human instincts, like the core stuff that makes us tick. The author breaks it down even further into the 5 F's, which are, get this, fight, flight, food, fornication, and fitting in.
Okay, I was with you until fornication. That seems a little out of place, doesn't it?
I know it sounds kind of strong, right? But the author is coming at it from this primal biological perspective. It's about that drive for connection, intimacy, that need to feel good and be close to others.
Ah, okay, that makes more sense. So what about those gates?
Right. So the gates are like the triggers that set off those essential instincts. And these triggers, they can be anything. Things in your environment, stuff that happens to you, even just your own thoughts and feelings.
So it's like something happens, it flips a switch, and bam, those instincts kick in.
You got it. And then where we direct that energy, that's where orientation comes in.
Okay, so like, do those instincts lead us towards something positive or just send us spiraling?
Exactly. And this is where it gets really mind-bendy. The author points out that our subconscious, the part of us that's running a lot of these automatic programs, it doesn't really understand the concept of no.
Wait, what does that even mean?
So let's say you're always telling yourself, I don't want to be depressed. Your subconscious might be latching onto the word depressed, like you're actually reinforcing the very thing you're trying to avoid.
Whoa, that's trippy. So it's like reverse psychology on yourself.
Kind of, like that saying what you resist persists. Or think of it this way, if I tell you don't picture a giant chocolate cake, what's the first thing that pops into your head?
Chocolate cake, obviously.
Exactly. So instead of focusing on what you don't want, the author says you got to get crystal clear on what you do want and phrase it in a way your subconscious can get behind.
Okay, that makes sense. So instead of, I don't want to feel anxious anymore, it's more like, I want to feel calm, cool, and collected.
You got it. And here's the key. They want you to describe that desired state, like feeling calm and at peace in super vivid detail.
So like, what does it look like, sound like, even smell like? You're basically painting a picture for your subconscious to follow.
Exactly. You're giving it a new blueprint, a new direction to move towards. And that, my friend, is how you start creating real change. And speaking of change, the author leaves us with this really thought-provoking question. What are your fundamental human needs, those essential F's we talked about, and how can you actually fulfill those needs in a healthy, positive way?
That's a good one. Really makes you think.
Right. It's about so much more than just fixing what's broken. It's about creating a life that truly lights you up, a life that feels aligned with who you are at your core. And to me, that's what this whole journey is all about. If you're as intrigued by this approach as we are, we highly recommend checking out the full ebook. We've got the link for you in the show notes. Until next time, remember, you have the power to heal and create a life you absolutely love.